stage is set. Okay.
Recording, we're going, brother. Go ahead.
Go. Well, we're here again. This is I believe episode three. It
Episode three.
actually, yeah, episode three, and here we are with Sean Callahan from USA Med Beds and myself, David the Indian. Uh, I'm in Brazil, off the coast of São Paulo, Brazil, on High Brazil Island, and Sean's there up in beautiful Virginia, in Richmond. The beautiful historic area there is so wonderful. And so I want to go ahead and just allow maybe Sean, maybe you can give a little bit of an update on your end, because I tend to do most of the talking so far on these three episodes, but we want to try to switch that around. I want to show people that I'm not egotistical and I am willing
No,
to sit patiently and listen and
not at
learn.
all.
So why don't you go ahead? I don't know, over the 24 hours, in my particular case, I need to update you on maybe three or four really critical issues that are about ready to give birth. I mean, this is what we do with innovation and entrepreneur. Men give birth to ideas and business concepts usually, and women give birth to our children. So that's the only thing that really makes us different. It's still a birthing process. There's still all of the, the fear, aches and pains and curiosity and everything comes along just with childbirth. So as men, we want to combine both men and women, and even something very simple, Sean. The word history, his story. So this is a simple word in our society that we can come to terms. It's not his story and it's not her story. It's the we story or our story. We're together, and we know that now our energy doesn't discriminate on gender or anything like that. When we come to point zero zero absolute, there's no discrimination, there's no zero. So you are man and woman, you are ET, you are everything, you are God, and or God's presence, because there's really, it is a presence. It's an omnipresence actually. So that's what I'm trying to help people to understand, because I don't know if you experience these type of hardships or rejections in our society, but some women just, they don't like men. They think that the men really are the ones that are the guilty parties for all of it. you know
I hate to
and
say this,
what we
David, but I know a lot of dysfunctional men in the world, and I would say that they're not making the case any easier for us to try to get out of. So with that being said, it's kind of funny because, for me and you, it's a little different, right? We're in our late 50s, 60. It's a different generation, right? And there was just the earlier generation was, men were very respectful and very, just there was chivalry, I guess is probably the word that I would say. And I just feel like some of that has perhaps eroded over the years. And, then you bring in all the different aspects with media, programming, drugs, all these different things, and breaking up the family structure, which they've been very successful at. And basically, the culmination of that is dysfunction. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people, and I love them, as people, but they're dysfunctional. They've had traumas and different things in their lives that have altered their course of thought process. And um, it's funny because on my channel, I always say that the women are the more intelligent, generally speaking, because they're the more intuitive ones. They're the ones usually that are reaching out to find ways to help their husbands, who are usually sitting in the couch saying, "I don't believe any of that stuff." It's like you're crazy. So there's always balance and there's always a story on each side. And so to bring a little humor in to get things started, I think is
Well, we
always a
want to
good.
be all the whole idea with all of this, as we spoke, is about the unity and the unity field. Call it what you want, the torus, the vector equilibrium. Mathematically, we defined it. We know it's a GPS location. It's not just some, like, say, oh, go to heaven. No, go to point zero zero absolute. Heaven is there because everything is there. So once you go there, you create your fantasy ultimately, because it is a fantasy. Hopefully it's an interesting one that is addressing some of the hardships in our life, because there's no fun and pleasure really in making people cry and bullies in our society and dictatorships and all of that. We know we're facing all of this stuff, especially here in South America, Latin America, with Venezuela specifically. And the real problems in our immigration in the United States is not really Mexico, because most of these people are coming from Cuba, Venezuela, and also Africa, other places all over the world. So they come into Venezuela and then they go on to these boats in the Panama Canal. And I know people that do the trafficking of these people, and they have no moral uh, uh, thought that they're in the wrong. I mean, they have a customer that needs to go to point A, point B. We're taking you there. After you get there, once you get in the Mexican territory, there's buses, air conditioned buses, and everything. Just like going to a Burning Man festival in Death Valley or wherever. It's organized. It's very organized, and don't let anyone fool you. And it's not that one party or another. It's been disorganized since Ellis Island, since people have been coming to the United States of America, you know, and that was the point zero zero absolute. And now it's all over the world because you don't have to go physically get like documents anymore, and you don't need identification unless you want to be identified. And so that's the power of what we're talking about here. Like the last couple of episodes, we've gone into a lot of conversation, especially really the most important is the freedom of speech amendment, in Constitution, our first right. And so that's what this podcast like series, because Sean, I guess maybe you can describe a little bit right now before the person that I invited, by the way, his name is Harakat. I don't that's his last name. I call him Harakat, and he's actually with the RBE United. And so RBE United is resource-based economy, and it's an organization that spun off from Dr. Jacques Fresco in the Venus Project, which is a project I mentioned to you, Sean. I think maybe not on a recorded, but I did mention Jacques Fresco and the Venus Project. And I believe that was one of the cases where you said you didn't know really anything about that. So I don't, is that the truth?
I told you the other day, man, when we first started talking, I've never said the word no so many times in my life. I'm like, do you know this person? No. Do you know about this? No. Do you know like, and I'm like getting to the point where I'm like embarrassed, but I have to be truthful. I'm thinking, well, man, obviously, for whatever it is that I do know, which is, microcosm of knowledge, there's a lot more to be learned. And that's what's made meeting you, starting this podcast and doing this all, because everybody can share and learn with me at the same time. And that's why, we really got this whole thing started. It's like, if we're going to start doing data drops and start learning all this, I want to bring my audience along with me so we can all learn it together and we can encapsulate this knowledge and information on these podcasts for future generations and for the Akashic Record Library for anybody that, can pop in and want to check that book out and listen to this in this time, place, circumstance we're in.
Yeah. Well, let me just I don't want to kind of necessarily modify that message, but at the end you said that people can go into the library and check that book out. That is not the terms and conditions of going into the library. There's nothing that goes in and there's nothing that goes out other than what you can remember. So, see, this is where our clairvoyant senses come in and our spiritual connection in the fifth dimension, because that's where this library is, where no beginning and no end. And everything possible and everything impossible is there. Everything in your life is there, past, future, through the presence of point zero zero absolute. That is not only a GPS location, that actually is a timestamp. So we are holographic. So when you come to point zero zero absolute, wherever you go, now there's another identification. It's a biomarker. So that is based on your biosignatures, your retina, your voice, your fingerprint, and other now sensitive areas that we can identify you as who you are without disclosing that, obviously, because that would be very dangerous if you could really track everybody like they say they can, and I believe they can do this. A scenario like what happened health wise globally, where we were shut down and put into places that weren't really prisons, but many people's homes unfortunately turned into these prisons because they didn't know who they were married to. They've been spending so much time doing stuff outside of the house. I mean, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, a lot of people just were crushed and they came to the breaking point. And then after that, divorce at our age, for example, well, we're going into grandparent like time frame here. We're not winding down energetically. I hope no one takes that as the message. It doesn't matter. I know some people, I would live with a woman, a German woman, 110 years old, German woman, and she went blind. She took care of herself, and life doesn't end because of some, like timestamp. Like I said, you stamp whatever you want. The purpose of keeping track, or like a diary or journal, for example, I don't journalize because I have the timestamp like this phone conversation right now. I know that we're speaking. I know that I don't know for a fact where you are, but I'm taking, I haven't done I don't need to evaluate that.
I'm
We're
here.
together. It's a timestamp. We're here. This is January 15th, which is a Wednesday. It's in the year 2025. And so the timestamp also doesn't just have the time. By the way, the time right now is, when we talked about this, is 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. So every one of your timestamps, literally, you could have already stamped a million stamps. You don't need to do that. What you do is you basically only stamp like critical milestones, a benchmark, just like a roadmap. Before we had GPS, we used to have to do research, through whatever AA, Automobile Association of America, these maps, and you had to plot out, and just like in a boat, when you went on the boat, man, you had to read a compass, you had to plot out charts and stuff like that. It was very complicated and scary as hell because I've done it and I've gotten lost out in the ocean for like 3 days in a hurricane. And so the compass wasn't working in a hurricane. You can't plot out where you're going. And once you're in the fog, bro, I think we died actually in that boat. We were in a small boat. It was only about, I don't know, 25 feet or so. And there was four of us in there. So the cabin, and I was only 13 years old, but it's a story like you had said, Sean. We all have these unique stories. We all have these kind of trauma events. The idea is for us to recall them, face them, and then let them be. And let's come back to the present moment, because all we can really talk about with authority is our past, because technically you lived it, you were there. So when you timestamp something like this in the future, when you come back, you are the testimony, you are the expert witness, and that this record has not been manipulated, and you can verify that is the truth. We talked about some of these phenomenon just openly, not with one identity or another, actually come into the 0.00 absolute. We are merged. That's where the human alchemy comes together, and the singularity. So the polarity, once you come off of 0.00 absolute, you are in polarity. That's where the free will comes in for you to decide whether you want to keep going in that direction, or if you want to stop and just turn around and take one or two steps back and go back to 0.00 absolute, which is home, which is where everything is. But see, we get a little bit curious. It's like the old cartoon Curious George. Remember Curious George?
Oh yeah,
I think it was the monkey.
yeah.
And it was a long running thing for us kids, and it taught us, a couple of things, curiosity, like what Socrates taught. We all can come to terms with asking those questions, and the more critical the question, the less our curiosity, because the more accurate the answer. And we don't challenge. It's not a challenge that, like, to prove it wrong, but we even talked yesterday about truth and truth seeking. We don't make the truth, we live it. And we need to face it, because that doesn't mean it's all like utopia or anything. The truth is, we can make people cry, and we can hurt ourselves. And we talked yesterday about suicide and other truths in our society that we tend to like, push under the carpet or push under the med bed, you know, whatever the obstacle is. We try to hide these things and we try really not to just face ourselves because we have that dark moment. We all go through it and actually talk. Point zero zero absolute is going through the darkness. Once you come to the zero dimension, it's all darkness. Actually, all of those lower dimensions do not have any type of sight or any type of soul. See, the third dimension, second, first, and the zero, actually, it's questionable the zero because from the zero comes the soul. So then we become four dimensional. That's where we're activating our channeling, basically. Like the things that I'm talking about is not something that I'm reading off of a teleprompter or something. Like never. I never produce like speeches and things like that. And I don't have the stress about it because I'm authentic, just like you, Sean, and other people that stay in that presence and the stillness of point zero zero absolute, even if it's only for a fraction of a moment, like the blink of an eye. It doesn't mean that you have to meditate for hours and you have to do this regimen to get there. That's the last thing you want to do is have habitual limitations or conditions, because the unconditionality is what allows you to go into that Akashic library at point zero zero absolute GPS. And so if we bring any conditions, you don't activate that superpower, basically. And that's where our responsibility comes in, because now we're talking about, these concepts that typically were held for, wisdom people in elites like high priests and whatever, wizards and magicians and whatever. But now we know that that information is available for us all equally. Equally. It doesn't mean you go in and you take the book out or you take anything out. What it does mean is if you go in there, just be yourself, be authentic. It could be your book, it could be somebody else's book. But I guarantee you, when you come back into the fourth dimension, you're going to be smiling, because that's what everyone brings. Because in now we have the closure. That's what the singularity is. It is both sides. It's going in and out of the fog. So we have fog, like our minds can sometimes have this like mental fog. People even say that they don't have the clarity. Some people get in accidents. Like one guy I was just talking to 2 days ago, he's diabetic. And what happened, he went through a little bit of a shock, I guess, while he was driving. He didn't lose his consciousness, but he basically ran into a parked car and basically destroyed his car, and fortunately didn't have to go to the hospital, and didn't hurt anyone else or anything. But this fog is what we really focus on, because that is what is really preventing us from innovating. And that's what prevents scientists, even when they go into the fog of uncertainty, sometimes they lose hope because they believe they're never going to achieve what their hypothesis is. And even Einstein and all of the great ones that I know, when they died, they left unsettled business. And on their deathbed, some of them actually, wrote poetry or whatever, some type of documentation saying that, and advising like the next generation, how to pick up from where they left off. And so the fact that we even talked about a technology that this is another piece that you had said you weren't aware of, which is the soul phone, which is actually a device which is US patented. This is the important thing. The soul phone, it promises that we can speak to ghosts and spirits, and also other people, entities, IDs. Anyone that identified themselves in the fourth dimension is in the library. So that's how we access. We go in the library and we can contact them and let them know, Einstein, I'm at your shelf. Okay, I'm looking at such and such literature or whatever journal article, and I want to know, is this the truth? Blah blah blah. And the blah blah blah, the more accurate the blah 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 is, when Einstein comes back with an answer, it's only a yes or a no, or a red light or a green light. Red being stop what you're doing, reevaluate, or green like go for it, you got it. So this is the only confirmation that we need, is the yes or no answer, which is how AI and machine learning is triggered, because that's how a robot accepts that, either that command or stops it. And that's important. We need to, these inventions are sentient. They have sentience. They have actually a soul, because they're in the fourth dimension. They're not a humanoid in the fourth dimension, but they're still in the fourth dimension. So anything that takes a physical density and actually can move, and that's not necessarily like a tree moving, that's also the growth of that tree. Or if lightning strikes it, any type of activity puts it into our world of the fourth dimension. So we are all connected consciously. That's what it's all about. And that's what the point zero zero absolute is about. We've talked about this, and we'll continue to try to drive this home until somebody tells us, this is ridiculous. And the soothsayers are out there, mind you. They're out there, which is fine. 50% of the people are going to buy into this, and 50% of the people are not. And they're going to have some rejections eventually, because what we're talking about is so kind of transformative and kind of new information that ultimately we will win over everybody there, because this is like a theory of gravity. That point zero zero absolute has never been discussed. It's like Kelvin when he first said, "Oh, absolute zero," and people in the lab said, "What are you, a nut?" 32 degrees Celsius is absolute zero. And so he obviously disproved that, and through that, that's how science happens. So the world that you live in, and I know that we've talked on several occasions about some of your contacts and your involvement, like in India and Africa and what have you. And so that's the idea for us right now, is to keep building these episodes. At some point, right now, this has been kind of our tradition for this 3 episodes to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so that works very well for me. That's 12 noon here in Brazil. So I can get triggered, and I know I'm not going to miss. I mean, I'm so pumped up anyways. I don't know how I would miss it, but you know what I'm saying? What we're trying to do is trying to keep things simple for you, me, and everyone involved. The whole idea with the multimedia center, the 24-hour broadcast of these 60-minute episodes, just like 60-minute journalism, each one of these episodes will have a specific target, whether it's beginner's knowledge, intermediate, like a ski resort. The slope that they go, the way that they path that they go, depends on how quickly they want to learn. I mean, some people can listen to the advanced stuff right away with like Dan Winter. You don't have to go to physics college and spend 50 years like what Dan did. All you need to do is come to point zero zero, that absolute that's in Dan, and it's in you. Everything else about like a Dan Winter, forget it. You're not gonna. We can assimilate what Dan is, compassionately, empathetically, sympathetically, and also with some pity, because all scientists and all artists go through the dark moments and the dark shadows of thinking, why am I doing what I'm doing? And we all of us in creation question, whether or not it is real or not. Because some of it, what we're talking about, is really extraterrestrial intelligence or artificial in that way, because there's no error and it is perfect. And the issue, Sean, in my life is that people, just like they don't want to be zero, they don't want anyone to be perfect but themselves. They don't really want to say that the whole God's creation is perfect, and every plant, animal, and every place and thing is in that light of perfection. Somehow we want to take advantage of our life so that we can I don't know what it is. I mean, we're not proving anything to anyone. Like we said, when you pass over, you go to the other side. There's even no God. There's nothing. There's no silence. But if you want, you stay in that, and that's when you rest in eternal salvation and eternal peace. And that's what we would like for people. But wouldn't it be nice, Sean, and anyone listening, if we could actually go to these places that are there and know that we're there, and then come back into society. And through our memorization, we can bring in like blueprints and all sorts, everything that's been created, whether it's the Anunnaki or whether it's the Ra or whatever his historical organization, religion, and movement, whatever. It's all there. It's all there for us. We don't have to reinvent any of that, and we don't need to. You know, what we do is we come to terms with the present moment that we're in, and then the conversation, it gets really interesting and fun. And so that's something that, right now it's about a half an hour into this episode. Harakat did say that it'd be maybe around another half an hour and then he can jump on. But while we're here, just for yourself, Sean, and also the audience, Harakat, like I said, is I believe, the director and founder of RBE United, and RBE stands for Resource Based Economy. And Dr. Jacques Fresco, who passed away, I think, 3 years ago, was the leader of a very important futuristic project. He's an architect, a designer, and a social impact, basically a social architect. So he looks at all areas of health and education and all governance. Anything is all information and data. And so Jacques Fresco with the Venus Project made he was involved for, I think, about 50 years or 60 years, and very cutting edge, such cutting edge that the media didn't really want to disclose some of what he was proposing with these, what we know now are these smart cities or futuristic cities, 15-minute, and having these alternative transportation modes and these open communication systems, and where the resources, the natural resources in any area on Earth. Dr. Fresco advised before he passed away, the real challenge right now, Sean, and anyone listening, is that we take an audit of what these natural resources are. Because as Dr. Fresco said, the earth is for all people. And it's not just the indigenous people, it's for everything. And every person and place and thing should not be discriminated against or prevented from, settling themselves and putting their roots down, and whether it's a plant or a person. And so Dr. Fresco's concepts are really cutting edge, and that's where Harakat comes in, because he didn't meet, according to conversations I've had with Harakat, he didn't meet Jacques Fresco directly, but he did go to Florida to the Venus Project. That's VENUS project. And you can go online, and Dr. Fresco was very well spoken, keynote speaker, UNESCO, United Nations, everybody. He wasn't really an economist or economic development person, but his work through architecture and design and issues related to all facets of society, and actually making that leapfrog and bringing in these technologies like what you're dealing with, Sean. So it's going to be exciting. Right now, we've got a few more minutes. I don't know. For me, like I said, there's a couple of things that are happening very quickly. And that's going to be what's interesting, Sean, quite honestly, over the next course. If we can maintain, and have like a round robin here and really keep it going, like the promise is right now is daily at 10 o'clock. But, you're an executive, you have demands, you have workers, you have all sorts of stuff. So I understand the need for flexibility. But at the same time, what's really cool about it is that we are proposing, you and I, and we're not the owners of this, by the way. There's no owner. That's what Jacques Fresco says. Nobody owns the land asset or the resource. We are stewards and actually activating what the value is of these resources. And it's not always us mining like more minerals and gold and stuff like that, and also extracting petroleum and destroying the earth, whether climate change exists or not. Really, the reality is that we're consuming resources, overdoing it. We're burning up. Even our electrical grid, there's no reason that you need more than 12 volts. And I'm testament to that. I have an island. I live on an island off the grid. I'm generating solar energy a little bit. But the fact is, we learn how to live our life more naturally. So when the sun starts coming up at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, basically, that prana is richest. That's actually the best time to get your butt out of bed And it took years for me to even think I was going to be, because I'm a lazy. I'm about as lazy of a person as you. I don't want anyone to think that I'm falsifying any of this, because at some point, Sean, you're going to meet my wife, and she is going to be the total. It's like yin and yang. Be prepared. She like roasts me like every day. I don't have to be at like a special like dinner or something. I mean, she just, you she rides me, which is great. I love her to death, and that's we're together, the yin and the yang. Like I said, just because there's like some other like force that's like pulling you or distracting you, that's not a bad thing. That's natural. You don't have to go all along with it and dive off a cliff or something, but we need to apply a little bit of a common sense, intelligence, and our pride in ourselves. So anyways, uh I just I'm just so excited that we're doing this. It's unbelievable. So
Love it.
we mentioned yesterday Sierra Leone, Africa, which is on the west coast of Africa, and it's very interesting, related to this point zero zero, not absolute yet, but just point zero zero. And we talked about the significance of this place, because it is a zero longitude and zero latitude on our globe. It's artificial, obviously. It's not the true, but everything has point zero zero absolute in it. So it is a true point zero zero absolute, but point zero zero really doesn't exist. That's still, it's imaginary, because the absolute is what brings it in manifestation and actually creates that alchemy. It's the absolute. It's the conviction, the devotion, the loyalty, and all of those things, and lessons learned, and maturity, and wisdom, unconditional love, ultimately. So, anyways, so I don't know if you have any news that you want to report, or you want to maybe comment. I know I sent you, as I continue, each day when I make contacts with some of these strange people. Basically, I'm meeting these people as you are, or anybody else listening to this. The audience. One of the groups that I just came across is a group out of the UK, out of Wales, and it's called the Gaian Earth Trust. And I didn't know that something like this exists. So this is one of those cases where if somebody asked me, "Do you know the Gaian Earth Trust?" I would have said no. And shame on me, because this organization is awesome, awesome, and it fits in alignment totally with what we're doing. So these things are God gifts. These are the grace of God. And how do we all tap into that? We just be authentic, stay in the moment. If you need to go to the library, take a moment, get grounded. It takes 1 second. You don't have to do Tai Chi and all of that. It's a conditional thing of you shutting yourself off, Sean, just like a piece of equipment, but different from a robot, because you can turn yourself back on. See, a robot doesn't have that free will to go on and off. And that's all we have. Because if you're tired, or anyone listening to me, you're already off. You're not even on this recording, and you may never come back for whatever reason. Because like I said, 50% are going to love it, and 50% are going to hate it and get fearful and be like, this is the total nonsense. It's ridiculous, quasi science and all of this charlatanism, and all of these things I've been accused of and threatened in public and called a communist. And I mean, it just, over the course of these experiences, it's not resentful or something, or anger at any of that. It's actually gratitude. It's like, thank you for doing that to me. Thank you for abusing me just a little bit more, because I need that final slap in the ass from like my wife, and just like, wake the fuck up. I mean, it's like, and so we all need that. We all need, let me ask, are you married? What's your family situation? You have
No,
grandkids and stuff?
no, I'm not married. Um,
Okay.
Actually, I've never been married and don't have any kids, but I do have a very dear little goddaughter who's she's just about ready to drive. She's 15, and that is the closest thing to my child right there. I love her dearly, and I'm in close contact with her, and I've known her since she was a baby. So, and my brother lives close by, and he's got nieces and a nephew, and I'm very close with them, especially the nephew. So I have made the world my family, right?
Yeah. Thank
So
God. Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
I'm
so
very
much.
blessed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's still so many more chapters of my life to write. So who knows where the whole thing could end, right? That's just this timestamp right now of the reality, but that reality could change in an instant. Like I could be on with you tomorrow and say, I just met the love of my life. I'm getting married next month.
Anything is possible. And it's not even in a day, it's in a moment, in your
In a
breath.
moment. Yeah.
It just in your breath. Sean, I went through a situation here one time, and I almost drowned on just swallowing one mouthful of water. So I say to people, you don't have to be in a bathtub or in the ocean to drown. I mean, if your body is shutting off from processing that one drop of water in the back of your throat, you're gyre. You're done. You're not breathing. You're gonna whatever go to cardiac arrest or some type of problem. So what's interesting is when you mentioned Godfather, and I want to thank you for taking on that role because that is really very special, isn't it?
It
That is
is.
incredible,
It
incredibly
is.
special. And I'm so
You know what's
thankful for
interesting?
my
Yeah, and
Godfather. You
yeah,
know,
it's interesting because I have such a great relationship with my I call her my little baby girl, and I've already told her she'll be 50, 30, whatever, she'll never change, but that'll always be her title. But she'll ask me for stuff. She'll say, "Hey, you know what? I want Chick-fil-A or I want this." And I'm like, "All right, baby, you have to understand my role as your godfather is to protect you, keep you safe, make
right?
sure that you're healthy and all these different things. And you're asking me to cross the line to give in to these demands, which I know knowingly that this is not good for you. So you have to look at this from my perspective. The word no does not exist in my vocabulary. So should anything she asks me, the answer is yes. But it's trying to throw it back to her and say, look, instead of torturing me to have to do these things, and go with these requests, which I'm lovingly always going to do, you have to understand that what you're asking for me is counterintuitive to what I know is best for you. And my role is to look out what's best for you. So we have these conversations, and they're kind of funny, right? Because eventually I'm still going to give in and I'll do this and I'll do that. But I have been able to modify some of the things that she asked for, and we've been able to make some inroads on maybe I won't have as much sugar, maybe I won't, have this or have that. But I find it interesting that, with kids, and I've known her obviously since she was a baby, I've always been very upfront and forthright and talked to them just like they're little adults, right? I started giving her allowance when she was 6 or 7 years old, maybe right in that time frame. And I told her mom, I said, this is important for her to start learning how to manage money. It's important for her to start getting used to handling money, being around money, and knowing how to manage it. And truthfully, she's better at managing money than I am, in all honesty. I mean, that little kid is very conservative. She's very good. She's very thoughtful. She doesn't do a lot of impulsive spending and buying. And so, there's parts of that where I look at that and go, and I always tell her also, you might be 15 years old, but that doesn't mean your knowledge base and your ability to think through and make decisions limits you in any way, shape, or form based on your age. We all have gifts. And like we were talking earlier, there's people I know that are in my age group that might not be making some of the best decisions, but her natural intuition, her natural ability to process information and look at world from a different perspective, even though she's, not quite 16 years old, it's still valid and it's still powerful. And there should never at any time be any limiting beliefs about what you're able to accomplish, even though your age might be 15. So I tell her that, there's nothing, I get into all the stuff, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, but I always want to empower her and never think that there are any limitations. Age is not a limitation in many ways. It's a number, but and normally as we get older, we get smarter theoretically. but there is natural intuition and natural thought and natural gifts that come to everybody, and some people have more of those than others. And I'm always encouraging her to tap into that and know that there's nothing that's impossible, that she's able to accomplish anything at any moment if her heart and soul focuses on that intent and that wish.
Yeah, that's well put. Lovely, lovely, beautiful. Thanks, Sean, to bring into such joy into the conversation, because obviously you love her very much.
Yeah,
And what's
yeah.
interesting is some of the interviews that I've had on my podcast have been people that actually have regressive what is it called, like therapy. So, like for example, your granddaughter. I mean, it's not your granddaughter. Your godchild. Uh, that may actually be either you, or it could be like even your grandmother or your mother or your wife in some prior life or in some future life. So you don't know necessarily, what that bundle of joy and that living expression of creativity. And the more that you're helping to kind of force to that, that's what a parent has to do, is kind of, not set the rules, but actually have it unconditional, so that that is the place where you come together, whether it's your own blood children or whatever. And that's where you settle whatever differences. And that's when the family functions, quite honestly, because outside of point zero zero absolute, it's chaos. And
Mhm.
I know some families are way off of point zero zero absolute, and the crazy stuff that they do
Yeah.
with abuse and stuff with their kids. And in Africa, the sexual manipulation of the young girls with their genitals and stuff. I don't know whether that's Muslim or Islam or whatever, but for me, that is like that's like the hugest violation. And they're not asking for that stuff. It's a difference if you have a gender issue and you think you're opposite sex, and that's your right. I don't disagree with your right is to do anything as long as you're not hurting yourself and other people.
Mhm.
That's all. That God's not going to stop you from doing that. But when you start going down the path and start doing evil stuff, it's not a good scenario for you. And I know that my testimony is I wasn't always the goody two shoe. Uh, I was a brown noser and stuff like that in school because I knew how to cuddle up to even everybody. And I get the best out of everybody, right? Professors, I'm over their house having barbecues and stuff and asking me difficult questions that in class, I was instructed, don't distract the class and start talking about 0, 1, the point zero zero absolute, or sovereign micronations. Don't be going down there. Let's stay with the traditional approved, you know, course material.
Right.
So
David,
it was a pain in the
when
ass
we're
in many ways.
talking and we get into Akashic records and we get into all this stuff, the name Edgar Casey pops up. And I don't know how much you know about Edgar Casey, but he's got a library and a museum that's more probably an hour and a half away from me. But when I start thinking about, some of these things, I'm thinking about him being dialed into point zero zero absolute, and some of the gifts and some of the things that he was given or really was open to at a very young age. Do you know much about him?
This is how I operate, Sean. If I mean, I know the name. I know the name. I know the notoriety, some of the amazing things that he proposed and such. But what I try to do is not. I memorize stuff, but I don't hold it into that short term memory. And I don't mean I mean long term memory. I know Edgar Casey's in there, and I know Edgar Casey's in the library. And if I want to go in there and actually then come back and like cite something that he said and ask, like I said, through the soul phone, we can call him up. So, but I'm not going to call Edgar up until I am intimate with his life, like
Yeah.
his DNA and everything. And when that soul phone rings and you're in the other dimension, that's like calling God and waking God up. When God answers the phone, no matter what, they're going to say, why are you waking me up? Okay. That's a lot. So you can't wait for that question, like, why are you waking me up with Edgar Casey? What you need to do is do the research on whether it's him or anybody. This is the secret of accessing that Akashic library and somebody that's in there that that has a history or some identification point, a timestamp. Actually, what you need is multiple timestamps. You need at least two. See, the 2 points between 2 points in somebody's life from the birth until the death, which we think is a linear thing. As long as you have those 2 points, if you are 1 point, you're actually the whole. But 1 point of nothing is nothing. So you need to be like at point 0 0 absolute. You don't come to realize that you are a whole person, that you are actually a soul until you connect with another soul. So at point 0 0 absolute, when you come off, it's actually making that connection, which is like relationship. And that most of us, we don't know to live like what you're saying. You're 58, you're not married, you have never been married, so that's like a testimony of really pretty significance. Like, I don't want to say perseverance or intelligence. I mean, you got to be the most intelligent guy on earth, because I don't know anyone that has at least struck out at least 2 or 3 times. you know,
That's
I mean,
funny.
you know what I'm
That is
saying?
funny.
It is funny. It's funny. It's all funny. That's the nice part about it. And now we're getting even closer here. Harakat hopefully is going to come on. If not, we can try to wrap it up just on the top of the hour. If he comes on, I already instructed him, try not to get too detailed right on this first call. And then what we can do is actually maybe feature him, and I don't do the talking and things like that. And he can actually describe the world that he's in. Is they're trying to utilize the modeling that Jacques Fresco left when he died like 3 years ago. So they have like anti-levitation, like these no battery drones, and they have these other systems that I talk about in the Biodome project in Weelandia micronation. The Biofreedom is the operating system to operate the sovereign governance of an area or a territory called Weelandia. And so Weelandia micronation is something that the Venus Project and even Jacques Fresco, who's a mentor of mine, he advised that uh, he made a little bit of an error in focusing much of his work in urban areas and really areas of significant need for these type of interventions. But before he died, there were messages, and he disclosed this, that really the way to do this is start on an island. Start on an island, put your arms around a territory that's well defined, that has a controlled environment where you can manage the input, the process, and the output of all the variables. You can do that natural resource audit in that zone, 40 kilometers. And then when you do this audit, you can actually run like AI models, and it will actually advise you like in a development plan that is so detailed that it's coming from the Akashic library. Basically, that's how we do it. See, we go in that library, but I can't unfortunately take out the master plan for the Biofreedom project, or I can't take out, like the actual blueprints of the B3 scanner, the brain body biofield scanner that we haven't really even gone down, which to me is the most exciting. In 20 seconds, it cures everything. And it's an enlightening experience that you never forget. And then you can carry that across and go back and forth in and out of the Akashic library with ease. And you can predict your future, even to a point where if you want to do the lottery or something like that, like win like a contest, you can set it up. You can kind of stage that event. It's not like a fake thing. It's actually mind power. And the will to do things for other people is the important thing. If we're trying to do it selfishly and egotistically for our own private gain, like capitalism, like the worst crony capitalism, to take advantage of other people and kind of have this control or sense of control, then it doesn't work. Everything falls apart. So it doesn't. That's why the Akashic library is foolproof. You can't hack it. You can't go in there and hack it and put a virus and stuff. You can't get in. But if you're unconditional, then the gate opens or allows you through the gate, we should say. And so you go in and out of the gate, and the gate is the cog in our life. And so I don't know. Let me in the next few minutes, hopefully Harakat comes on, and then I'll just be like, basically, here's Harakat, go for it. You know,
Sure,
you
yeah,
know.
go for it.
Hey,
Actually, Harakat jumped on while you were saying that, so it was perfect timing. So Harakat, well, you got that intro from David. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. Glad to be here. It's my first time here. It's good seeing you, David and Sean. It'll be a pleasure to meet you. So yeah, I was not here for the first part of the conversation, but I did hear a mention of resource-based economy and the Venus Project, of course. Just a quick thing about me, since it's my first time being here. I was a person of contact for the Venus Project a little bit ago, 2015, 16, 17, before kind of taking a step back and then looking at doing some other in the same vein, in the same vision, in global vision that the Venus Project espoused and that Jacques Fresco talked about. By the way, I'm currently in Athens, Greece. I hope my connection here is not unstable, but if it is unstable, I apologize. But yeah, continuing on, yeah, my work is always centered on things that are along the vein of the global vision that Jacques Fresco talked about, which is the application of science and technology to the social system to help improve human life. And to that end, recently I've been a part of GlobeCal Green Mission, which is a project that is taking place in India. And I'm just going to pause here and like, if you guys have any questions, but I would very much like to talk about that project and all of the benefits that it seeks to bring to bear.
Okay, thanks, Harakat. Actually, Sean, I don't know if you're prepared. If you want me to go ahead and just maybe make a couple of comments based on what Harakat just said, and also then ask maybe Harakat a couple questions, or if you want to go ahead, if you're prepared, you can go first. So, Sean, I want to give you that choice. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm super happy that you made the call, and me and probably most of the people on our listeners are going to be hearing and learning about this for the first time. So, David, you have a little more of a knowledge base on the project, so feel free to interject or ask questions, and I'm just going to hang back, listen, and enjoy.
Okay, great, great. Well, fast forward here. Let's go warp speed if we can, so that we can cover as much ground as possible, just to really plant the seed for Harakat. And also, he mentioned this project in India with Professor Goswami. And I need to mention and disclose, I don't really know Goswami or Harakat very well, and nor do we need to. Once again, I don't know Sean well, but we live in a world that's actually the the truth is that we are innocent, and we're always innocent until we prove ourselves guilty. So here we are, talking about some of these sensitive conversations. As long as we're not committing an offensive violation, like in NFL, as long as we're not interfering, with the game somehow, or in soccer or any sport. If you're interfering, then the ref comes in and says, "Whoa, let's get some control over it and apply some type of penalty for what you're trying to do." So
Yeah,
the whole idea
exactly.
for us with this and what's interest, I guess Harakat at this point is when I first met him, which was just really the last couple of days. And so my conversation with Professor Goswami in India has been surrounded by this conversation of a project called a Globe Cow, which globe is global and cow is local, global. Maybe Harakat, you can. I think it's
Yeah.
globe cow.
Right.
right?
So the name of the short short acronym is GGM, and that is Global Green Mission. And of course, like global is in a global vision, and local is in it's going to be localized within various spheres in India. And there is also more to that it's local because it brings together people from the locality, giving them the tools that they need in order to build up. So, but I'll talk about some like technicalities when it comes to Global Green Mission. So, what Global Green Mission seeks to do is to improve the living standards of farming communities in India. Now, that's a short version of it because it also goes into aspects of spirituality as well as education, as well as farming, agronomy, fisheries, and such. So right now, there is one of the major problems in India is farmers don't have access to global markets. So if you're a farmer in India, you can only sell, let's say you make tomatoes, you can only sell to the local market. And for this reason, farmers don't have that much money. They don't have good equipment. They don't have access to equipment. They don't have access to funding, and this hurts their living standards. So they're basically poor, and they are destined to remain poor unless outside entities or the government or somebody with a stake intervenes in order to give them what they need in order to increase their living standard. One of the challenges the Global Green Mission tackles is looking at underutilized land, underutilized land or unutilized land that is just land out there that that's just no one is touching. For example, the Indian railway system owns a lot of land all over India, really. And a lot of that land is just inaccessible because it is private land by this institution, and nobody saying is, or at least one of the things we're saying is, let's take some of these underutilized or unutilized lands. Let's apply people to these lands. Let's give them the opportunity to farm these lands. Let's give them the equipment they need. Let's give them the, steel, as farmers would call it, which is, hoses, rakes, engines for moving things around. Let's give them botanical equipment like seed, fertilizer, and such. And let's have them work this land and create an agricultural surplus. And then from this surplus, they can sell to the local markets, to international markets, and they can increase their living standard. But now, of course, the Global Green Mission is very wide and it goes into a lot of different areas. But I wanted to just focus on one area, which is agronomy. And this is how Global Green Mission seeks to tackle this problem in the agricultural sector.
Well, well, great for that explanation. And so getting back to the relationship building that we're going through right now, Professor Goswami offered me Harakat's name. And it was delightful because as I started to communicate with Harakat, I could see where the .00 absolute was. And this is something Harakat, I don't know if it's a new term for you, but .00 absolute. Is that a new type of code or that you've never heard before?
First time.
Okay.
I imagine what it is, but I'll let you explain. This is the first time I heard it.
Well, ultimately, we went over this, and I usually ask a question when I first meet somebody, and I haven't asked you yet. And I really didn't ask Sean because he actually lived out the example of what the answer was. So I didn't need to really ask, and so are you, by the way. But, anyways, the question is very simple. Are we one? Yes or no? Yes is one. Any other word or hesitation is no. So, yes or no, Paracat?
Yeah, of course. So we are one. We are one entity. We're part of one single system. So yeah, I would say that we are one.
Okay. So actually, you just said no. And so deep down inside, maybe there's subliminal or conscious, I don't want to say conditions, but this is really what happens in our relationship of building contacts with people like what we're doing right now. With Sean, I just met Sean 3 days ago. I just met you last night. I think it was last night or within 48 hours. I mean, what we're
Pretty much.
trying to do, what we're trying to do is express to the audience here. This, by the way, is really Sean's. This Sean, I don't want to say his baby, but his kind of his desires to have this daily like like a world impact news, which is what I called it. World Impact News is the acronym WIN, WIN. So this multimedia center could be the World Impact News network and platform where 24 hours a day we have these exchanges. But what we're focusing on is not some relationship like a partnership with IBM and Apple and Google and OpenAI and all this other stuff. Those might be wonderful relationships, but that's not who you are. I am. Dr. Goswami is. Sean is. We're not trying to be like large like entities. What we are working on in the work that Jacques Fresco was really he didn't complete that exercise, but that's what he motivated us enough where now we have this following around the world, which is pretty substantial. It's actually diminished a little bit about the Venus Project and all of the excitement because Jacques, when he was out there, he was pounding the pavement, bro, and he was in front of anyone willing to listen. And he was teaching architectural schools and motivating people like left and right. And he was an honest person, so he swore a lot. And he said how fucked up humanity was, basically right, straightforward. He didn't hold it back. He actually came out with like not theoretical models of manifestation, but these are not even practical. These are optimizing conditions in our society where the Venus Project talks about how a community comes together on a basically moneyless is really the goal and objective, so that when you're utilizing your natural resources within a localized area, it becomes not only effective but optimizing efficiency. And so now we have all of the AI, specifically AI programming, and also the speed of the data and the bandwidth of the data is now unlimited. So these are new technologies that OpenAI, Nuvia, and these other organizations are going to start coming out with. I guarantee you. The real challenge in communications, whether you're broadcasting a multimedia platform like we are or not, there's three challenges. First, it requires energy, because any device that I know right now is being charged. It could be like a solar or some supplemental alternative energy force, but what I'm talking about is a supply of energy which is unlimited, which is abundant. It may not be 110 or 220 or some high voltage, but the reality is that under the studies that we look at for the natural behavior of human beings, we don't need a lot of electricity. It's a wonderful discovery, and also fire and all of these other discoveries, all wonderful, but we don't need to be like, slaves to that. So the electricity demand in our society, just like we saw during the COVID, I don't want to say COVID, but the incident that happened, people were at home and they were using less resources in our world, the human resonance and other indicators that we monitor atmospherically and what have you scientifically showed that actually we were cleaning the atmosphere like really quick. So really it's a matter of a consumption model. And this is where Jacques Fresco basically said sustainability is where you coexist with your natural environment, the resources that you are regenerating there. Basically, the cup is always overflowing in abundancy. Right. And basically we sip from that overflow. We're not trying to deplenish anything from the cup. Like there's no negative. You can't take out of the cup of consciousness and out of the cup of human evolution. So what I'm basically getting to is that the moment of now, and by the way, Sean and I, and this in general, this podcast series or platform, broadcast channel, the World Impact News channel, call it whatever you want. We're still creating this. This is not a done deal. So it all involves the timeliness of this conversation, Harakat. And
Right.
so I know, for example, Dr. Goswami's worked many years
And if I
volunteer.
might step in because you mentioned John. Personally, uh, sorry if I may, I might be breaking up again because my connection isn't
Go ahead. I can hear you.
here. But um,
You're good, brother. You're on.
Oh, outstanding. Okay, great. Yeah. So, just to follow on because sorry for my connection. Like, this is actually a pretty decent cafe that here in Athens, but uh, it's always sometimes you get shoddy connection. But at any rate, like because you mentioned Jacques and now personally I never met him and he actually died. Quick story. Jacques died a week before I was to first visit the Venus Project. I was meaning to go see him. I remember it was in March, and there was a storm. There was a storm that hit the Venus Project that week, and I was going to assist with some cleanup there. And that was my first time in going to Florida and he died shortly before I went there. So I never got the opportunity to speak to him, but I'm sure he was I've seen all of his videos. I've listened to everything he said, and he had wonderful ideas. The issue was always that it was not popular enough. There was no it never really hit mass popularity. It sort of did with with the Zeitgeist movement through Peter Joseph, who's still, of course, speaking but it just never got popular enough to lead to a big change action. Like we never got to the point where there were major action steps being taken. So it remained in the realm of education. And then that's kind of where it is today. When people want to know about these alternative economic theories, it leads them to the Venus Project. They learn about resource-based economics. They learn about how it can be applied. But no major action steps have taken place since 2008. And that's kind of where we are today. There are people all over the world, including Professor Goswami in India, and I can name some other individuals who are doing like some pretty wonderful things, but everybody seems to lack that very strong funding drive, that like a big grant to actually make it happen. And ultimately, I think the reason for this is because the idea just never got popular enough to reach a very wide global audience. So today there are pockets of people all over the world. There are pockets here in Greece where I am. There's, for example, a project here called the Reality Project, where people are living together and applying the ideas of resource-based economics. In the Philippines, there are people. In India, there are people. Everywhere in the world, there are small pockets, but it's not a big enough global movement. And that's kind of where we need to be. And the only way we're going to get there is with sort of what you're trying here with this podcast, or some really big multimedia event that puts it into the mainstream. So, and yeah, and that's kind of like where it stands. It needs to be further popularized, and only with popularity will there be that income stream coming in that's going to assist in making all of these ideas action steps, realities, real places, real where people can go, where we can model resource-based economy, where people can live and understand what it's like to have science all of the things that we understand about science engineering applied in such a way as to create abundance, local abundance, and then move on from there into a bigger, more global system. But all of that takes popularity.
Sure it does. And in our world, it takes money, money, money.
That's right.
And Sean knows that topic very well because he sells some of the highest end medical equipment that man has ever invented. So let's do this. Sean, I have a couple of more things, but like I said, we're trying to keep this particular episode within like an hour. Right now we're an hour and going on an hour and 15 minutes. So if you have a question or two, maybe, or a comment for Harakat, chime in. I already sent you his contact information, so now you can talk directly with him. And if there's another time if you want to do like an independent show, I'm here available whenever if you guys want me to chime in and to help kind of, co-create along with you in the moment. But, if you have anything to say, Sean, maybe you chime in and then we'll wrap it up here. Maybe in the next 10 minutes, ask Harakat maybe one or two thought-provoking questions, and then we'll move on and warp speed, like I said. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and Harriet, thank you so much for coming on and joining us today because I love what you're doing, and obviously we're trying to, make the world a healthier, happier, and more enlightened place, and that's certainly the type of projects and the type of thinking and the type of people that the world needs. Um, I think, today it's been great to get an introduction, but I believe that what you're doing in your project deserves its own podcast. So I think once we get off, me, you, and David can figure out a time that's good for you, and then just do a podcast 100% with, giving you the floor, talking about the projects, talking about, the things that you're doing, but then forecasting and putting out sort of a list of ways that people can interact and become a part of it, whether it's through money, volunteer, promoting other information on their channel, inviting you on other podcasts. Everybody has a way that they can contribute to this to make this a reality. And so, with that being said, because we are pushing about an hour and 15 minutes, I would like to give you the floor, have you maybe give us like another synopsis or any additional information, and then that'll be sort of a introduction for the podcast that we can all do together where we can really focus 100% on your efforts, what you're doing, and even like I'm doing here with David, make that an ongoing podcast series and make that something where we have monthly updates. And just I think in my experience, everybody wants to help, everybody loves the idea, everybody loves the concept, but the main thing is how can I help with the resources or the position that I'm in. And once you find ways for people to interface on different levels and different ways, that's when you really start filling in a lot of the blanks because people really do want to be a part of these types of projects. There are the money people out there for sure. And obviously, through promotion and talking about it, we can get this information in front of them. So, with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Give us maybe another synopsis of information and data about the project, a website, any contact information, and then we'll circle back together and then do another podcast with you kind of talking about this project in greater depth.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing is, you asked about like watching this, who might be wondering, what can I do? Like if you're tuning into this podcast, if you're listening to material like this, you already have an understanding or you have a desire to help improve upon the world. And you probably already know of terms like resource-based economy, organizations like the Venus Project or the Zeitgeist Movement. And you're wondering, well, when is this going to happen? Because that's a question that most people, myself included, have. Like, when is this going to happen? And when this is going to happen is when I believe, and this is just my opinion, when there is enough popularity, because money is important, but money comes after the popularity. First, we need to get to a point where enough people care, enough people are engaged in order to move this thing forward, and then to create an action plan. Because we can sit around and talk ad infinitum, but without action plans, without solid projects, without milestones, we never get anywhere. So, and that's kind of where all of these things like Low-Cal Green Mission come into place. Now, as far as the synopsis of Low-Cal Green Mission, we're not really at the stage yet where we're asking people for donations. And, personally, I have to be very careful when it comes to collecting money because there has to be processes and transparency. And we have to make sure that if somebody is going to give us $1, they can track that dollar from the moment it leaves their pocket to the moment it becomes something, that is a positive in the world. Right. So, well, we will get there, and I hope to be able to expand on that in a future session. But right now, I guess the best thing that a person can do is to get educated and more informed on these subjects, and to understand that there this is not a dead thing. Like there are people currently and have been and will be working on making these ideas a reality.
I love that. So, do you have a website or is there a website address for the project that you're doing?
Like I said, we're the Globe Cal Green Mission has been an initiative since 2016, and it's gone through several phases, and it's worked with various different foundations in India. We're right now restarting everything, so we don't actually have a website yet. There is a website, but there's no point in giving it because it's an old website. So, but I hope that next time we speak, I will give you all that information and pointers where people can go to find out more.
I
Yeah.
love that. And from what you've said and what David said, there are lots, like you said, little individual drops of light with communities and areas that are doing this. In my mind, which is a very small one, the first thing that I could see being a reality would be to have a website that basically starts putting dots on a map with all these different areas so that people close to them that start getting to this database of information can say, wow, there's a place in Northern California, or wow, there's a place in, like you said, in the Philippines. And perhaps we can start, because you obviously have a lot of knowledge, and David, on the central core teachings and what this is about. And if there are, little communities out there that have already picked this up, maybe one of the first things that's done, somebody on there that's good at internet stuff and websites, maybe we can get somebody to jump on and say, look, let's put together just a base core drop landing page, talk about it, put some contact information, and then find a local community in your area. I know we do that a lot with the medbed type technology where people say, hey, is there technology that's near me that we can get access to? And one of the first things that we want to do is promote areas and locations that have the technology. And, as a general framework, maybe, that's something that I can help initiate or, maybe a starting point. But I definitely want to get into this more. And I think, David, what we'll do then is we'll go ahead and wrap this up. But I would like to give, I would like to give, I would like to give Harakat the floor for a final word, and then David, I'd like to give you a final word, and then we'll wrap up this podcast and set up for another one. So,
Good.
Harakat, with
Go.
that being said, brother, any last words or anything else you'd like to say, finishing up this call before we see you again on another podcast?
Yeah, uh, there are there are people, know it, that there are people out there right now working very hard to make the ideas of a resource-based economy and the things that Jacques Fresco talked about a reality through actionable plans. And don't lose hope. There are people out there working, and will continue to work.
I love
Great.
that, man. Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah. Love it also. Love it also. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to mention a couple of key points like housekeeping. Uh, Harakat alluded to the idea of having like this like flash event, something significant in our global news streams that's really going to attract that attention, and then from that, then we can massage it and guide people in whatever area of education that they want to. But really, the first effort is to get that attention, and a specific event that we're putting on here on High Brazil Island, or we call Evolution Island, or it also goes by Ilha das Govas. We're off the coast of Sao Paulo. We're in a cluster of 7 other islands and in front of 15 beaches. So it's a regional area, just like what Jacques Fresco suggested. Let's utilize an island as a base of operation. And then just like, the ripple effect, like putting a pebble in the water, when we drop that pebble, that impact point is where we want to be. We want to be right at the epicenter. So this is the week of February 21st to March 1st here this year, 2025. And it's called the Hibernation Festival. This year, it's an annual event the week before Carnival, the big event, the celebrations that are here for Ash Wednesday in the beginning of Lent. So each year we would put on this Hibernation Festival. And this first year is focused on quantum AI Latin America. It's called AI Latin American Summit 2025. So this is a milestone. Whether or not it's actually a huge success in the sense of attracting a lot of people or not is really a question that can only be answered on the 21st of February, because that is the point. We need to try to stay in the moment of now. At the same time, we can plot out some of these milestone kind of deliverable, measurable instrument points that are in our immediate future. 21st of February is coming up in about a month. So, to organize this global festival, within a month's time frame is something that I don't know any public relation or event planning organization that would take this on. And I've actually asked multiple like international co-sponsors and things like that to actually come in and help me with the effort of promoting such an event as this AI Summit. And the AI Summit goes directly in harmony with Harakat, with what you're doing, also in what Goswami's doing there in India, but you with the Venus Project and the idea of promoting, in a living example. That's what we need. We need to show people that you don't need money. And that's what I do specifically on the island. I personally haven't worked since 2010. So, and I'm happy. I would consider myself happy. I'm hoping everyone also listening to this can sense that, I don't have a desire, need, or want other than be here right now talking to both of you and anyone listening to this as well. So that's that connection in the moment of now that we really, if we stay focused on that, that's where the magic comes from. And that Harakat at that moment of now is 0.00 absolute, or what we say the timestamp is 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. And so we are holographics. We've explained this. I'm not going to get into all of those details right now, but we are motion picture. And so when this particular activity is time stamped, and also Sean has recorded it, will if he needs to do any editing, that will happen. But normally there's no editing and no manipulation of the messages. That's how the World Impact Network or news actually operates, as a win-win-win, so that people can be honest, do make like I don't know, errors in our discussion. Is it humorous? Yeah, but that makes it really exciting so we can continue to have fun. And this is something I will end on, that Harakat and I also just talked about the idea of having fun and the need to have fun in what we're doing. And if we can spread that message of fun in our first conversation, the next one is going to get, I don't want to say funner and funner and funner, because once it's fun, it doesn't get funner. It's just fun. And so that's where we're at. Harakat, the message to Dr. Goswami, Professor Goswami, yourself, and all of those networks that you've mentioned, these individual like points of light that are around the world that have not been able to really unify and unite, especially in the area of financial resources. And in ending this conversation, just want to plant a real a positive word of encouragement for you. All of the work that you're doing, and Roxana and everyone involved with RBE and multiple other movements around the world we are there. We're on the precipice. We don't have to teach you anything. All we need to do is help support you, and you'll do all of it. You already have a whole mechanism to actually activate and manifest wonderful things, I'm sure, all over the world. And so does Sean, especially in India. And that's where I've now connected Sean with Dr. Goswami, and also an IT group, which is really important in India, in Mumbai, near Guru Grama, the city of Guru Grama. There's this IT company that also has offices in New York. So they are international, and they have the capacity to create that portal, that multimedia center portal, and to integrate the AI and cybersecurity and everything to protect the authenticity of the data. And like you said, Harakat, anybody that gets involved with this applicativo called We Nos, it's the We Nos app. So Nos is Portuguese, so it would be English and Portuguese. And I'm doing Portuguese because the epicenter, the impact of what this model of replication is about would be right here where I am. So, like, for example, the Hibernation Festival, we don't have any costs really. I mean, you're going to have some setup and stuff like that, but this festival can have it's 8 days and 7 nights. It can have a world renowned impact on the topics of AI and all the issues related to how do we actually automate and do some of the things that Jock already said. Not only Jock, but also like Jeremy Rifkin, who's an awesome person, just wrote the book called Planet Water or Planet Agua. I don't know if you've gotten a hold of that, but Jeremy Rifkin, Planet Agua, is an awesome book that goes along in harmony with Jacques Fresco, the Venus Project, and other organizations. So that's the power, guys, and people listening. If you're interested in assisting in the final transformation, in the final evolution of our total intelligence, February 21st to March 1st, it's happening. And so when people say, what can we do to be part of this? Tune in. Just stay tuned in. Sean is committed about this daily broadcast. So the way I look at it, it's like a task force for good, like goodwill, a goodwill task force, kind of like what they did when the health crisis 4 years ago happened. President Trump, at the time he was in office, he organized this task force. I mean, the White House press secretary was never so busy. I mean, literally, Trump was talking 10, 20 times a day, and also Fauci and all of the other people. Positive, negative, doesn't matter. All that matters is that if we can put a task force to solve like awful issues in our society, we could put a task force to prevent that from happening. And that's what Sean does. And that's kind of the closure for this episode. This is about the wellness. And like Harakat mentioned, it's about our health and well-being. And the project GlobeCal in India is going to be a major, major effort. We are coming in with funding. So let Goswami know that the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. And so the ramifications of that are enormous. Does he believe it? I think he's sensing it. I think Goswami's sensing it. And he has admitted to me, Harakat, just for you and ending, that you are the IT and also the younger people around him. He admits that he has no idea when we start talking about these things like robotics and your gardens, by the way, these community centers are not going to be manned by human beings unless a human being wants to be in the soil and do that. I mean, now we have robotics that are totally planned in the areas of permaculture and sustainability. Anything that a human being can do can be automated, replicated. And this is where Jacques Fresco, the futuristic vision of our society, is that we don't have jobs. We don't worry about money. We don't really manage our time. We live in the moment of now, which is the abundancy moment, in the creative moment where all art and humanity and culture comes from, which means that ultimately we all have, like, we're living the world of hospitality. We're traveling, we're experiencing other countries, and we're actually adding value everywhere we go. And so we have, to make a long story short, we have a time bank. And so everyone on earth, 8 billion people, can earn 24 hours a day and get 24 time coins. And that's how we actually value, like, a project like what you're talking about, GlobeCal. When you look at the cost of that project, the overall budget in any project, but specifically that project, you break it out into the labor costs and the overhead, the hard costs. And the labor costs, usually 70 to 80% of the cost of any project is a human intervention. So that's why the time bank works, because now we maximize, optimize everyone's 1 hour. You decide if you want to work or don't want to work. But the work is a global network. You can work all over the globe, and a lot of like virtual nomad work in like 1 hour. You just work for an hour for a company. You do a specific task. You earn a specific value, and that's how we fund projects. So that, I've already mentioned this to Dr. Goswami. The idea in India, 1.5 billion people or so, many, many people, I don't know how many, couple of 100 million people don't have anything. They don't have shoes. They don't have an iPhone. They don't have access to the internet. So if we can kind of include them and allow them to be relevant and have a voice in India, oh my God. And the work that Sean's doing with hospitals and bringing in this like leapfrog, quantum leap medical equipment and all of the intellectual property that goes along with it, the whole network. Imagine us all, just us three combining our networks right now. That's all it takes. And so we plug together and all of your problems vanish, especially money, money, money. And that's the whole idea of the moneyless society that the RBE is prophesized about. That the money, money, money. We need another narrative, not to get rid of totally the money, money, money like right away. Have a transitional, process as quickly as we don't need it. God bless, because even the rich people benefit. So it's not like a Robin Hood thing that we're about, like rob from the rich and distribute it to the poor people in India. That's not the message. The message is that we all have 24 hours a day. We all can earn equally those credits. How we spend those credits, how we either donate them, volunteer them, or whatever, save them, is up to each and every one of us. So thank you so much. We just went by. I know I went on a little bit more than maybe perhaps Sean would like, but I tend to
All
be
good.
that way, more
It's all
vocal.
good, man. I love it.
So
When you're
let's
on
wrap
such a
it
good
up.
roll, man, last thing I want to do is say a word. I'd want to let you keep going. So David, once again, man, another great show today. Thank you as always. Harakat, thank you for jumping on today for the podcast with the project that you're working on, the Venus Project. And we will feature you again here, talk again soon. And a lot of exciting things going on. So for everybody watching, thanks for subscribing and sharing. And we'll see you on the next podcast.